This is Aussie Mac Zone. We'll cover everything Apple, including Macs, iPhones, iPads, and more. All this from an Aussie perspective. Sit back, relax, and insert yourself into the zone. The Aussie Mac Zone.
Hi everybody, welcome to show 269 of Aussie Mac Zone. I'm just here on my own, floating along tonight. Zarn's got some big news for us next week, I hope. He'll be back by then. And remember that we are brought to you by AussieTechRadio.com and Aussie Tech Heads Podcasting. So our Aussie Apple ramblings this week. Apple ordered to pull part of press release in Qualcomm case. Now this is the case between Apple and Qualcomm regarding Qualcomm's chips, which they wouldn't even supply for this year's iPhones. So that's why they've only got Intel chips in them. Now the iPhone maker was banned from selling the iPhone 7 and 8 models in Germany in December following a patent dispute with Qualcomm. Qualcomm on Thursday obtained the preliminary injunction stopping Apple from using a statement that it released to the press in response to the December ruling. At the time, the iPhone maker said that it would no longer stock the iPhone 7 and 8 at its 15 retail outlets in Germany, but those models would remain available to customers through more than 4,300 carriers and resellers across Germany. The press release is misleading as it contains statements that are at least potentially deceptive about the availability of the goods, namely the iPhones affected by the ruling, a three-judge panel wrote in the latest ruling. The judges said Apple's press release gives consumers and retailers the false impression of unlimited availability of the phones. So I think they're trying to say you're not allowed to sell them, but Apple is saying, well, we're going to sell them anyway. So good on you, Apple. And it's all to do with Qualcomm asking too much money per device, basically. And they didn't get any sales of chips this time. So be interesting to see what happens as the case goes on. Now, as we've asked before, anybody want to be on the show as a guest, please contact Michael at aussiemaczone.com.au. Now, here's more good news. We've got some good news. Johnson & Johnson study to determine whether the Apple Watch can diagnose stroke risk. Apple is partnering with pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson to study whether Apple Watch can be used to diagnose an increased risk of stroke. A stroke is when poor blood flow in the brain results in brain damage. Common symptoms include partial paralysis, partial loss of vision, and difficulties speaking or understanding speech. Some symptoms may be temporary, while others may prove permanent. Stroke can also prove fatal, and in 2015 was the second most frequent cause of death after heart disease. USA Today reports that the study wants to determine whether AFib detection, when combined with a new app, could accelerate diagnosis. The firm believes that AFib is significantly more common than has so far been suspected, and that early detection can be the key to stroke prevention. And with the Apple Watch detecting AFib now, that will be excellent, won't it? Now, all of this good news is on top of a 400% increase in health-related job openings at Apple. And we know that that's already been on the rise for a couple of years, so they're obviously keeping going, which is great. Now, just a reminder that this week we are brought to you by Aussie Tech Heads Podcasting. So if you're thinking about doing podcasting and you like some support, etc., you can call Glenn at Aussie Tech Heads in Queensland, and he can help you out there. Aussie Tech Heads Podcasting. Yeah, please. Maybe think about joining the crew. Now, Apple Pay in Australia now lets users switch between Visa and EFTPOS on compatible debit cards and avoid credit card fees. Apple Pay now supports dual network debit cards in Australia. This enables users to avoid credit card fees at merchants that support EFTPOS at point of sale. For now, this feature only applies to Australia, where dual network cards are quite common. The default Visa payment often sees customers incurring fees that they could otherwise avoid using physical cards. Now, this personally happens to me at one of my suppliers, where is if I say I want to use Apple Pay, they put a credit card fee on. So the choose payment option feature enables an Apple Pay user to select at the time of purchase whether they want to use Visa or EFTPOS on their dual network cards. So whether you want to pay by credit card or use EFTPOS, which is just taking it directly out of your bank. So there's no credit card fees available. Now, adding a dual network card is the same as adding any other bank card to Apple Pay. Just use the wallet app on the iPhone. Now, if you have already set up Apple Pay, to see the new payment option interface, you will need to delete your current dual network card and add it again. From there, you can tap on your card and see a new control that lists the possible payment options, if there are multiple. By default, this will be set to Visa, but you can simply tap to select the default payment option. To change to EFTPOS on Apple Watch, double-click the side button to bring up the Apple Pay UI user interface, then firmly press on the display to bring up a picker menu of payment networks for the selected card. EFTPOS is not compatible with overseas transactions when making payments outside Australia or Apple Pay on the web. Apple Pay in Australia will automatically select Visa in the latter case, but users will need to remember to switch manually from EFTPOS to Visa when travelling abroad. So that's good, and looks like we're leading the world on that little bit of technology. Excellent. Now we have another story here regarding Apple's woes, as they say. So Bloomberg ran an eye-catching article by Mark Gurman yesterday. It currently has the headline, Apple plans to cut back on hiring due to iPhone sales struggles. The title of the web, what you see in the browser tab, for example, is Apple cuts back on some hiring after selling fewer iPhones. And the URL slug for the article, usually a sign as to what the original headline was, is Apple is said to plan some hiring reductions amid iPhone woes. These three headlines paint very different summaries of the story. Are they cutting back on hiring or planning to? Or due to iPhone sales struggle, is it a lot punchier than after selling fewer iPhones? It attributes cause rather than merely implying it, and the iPhone sales struggles paints a grimmer picture than selling fewer iPhones. Did Bloomberg tweak the headline to arrive at Apple plans to cut back on hiring due to iPhone sales struggles? Because that's the most accurate summary of the story, or because it's the most sensational? And what the heck? It's actually going on at Apple. And what the heck is actually going on at Apple? Keep in mind that even with their earnings warnings, Apple's holiday quarter is going to be the second biggest quarter, both by revenue and profit, for any company in history. Second only to Apple's holiday quarter a year ago. Now, the basic narrative of Gurman's piece, especially when you start from the impression left by the headline, is that iPhone sales are so problematic the company is going to hire fewer people this year than it had expected to. Like they're in financial dire straits. So yes, there's all these stories to get us to click through so they can get the advertising revenue saying how bad Apple is at the moment. So yes, but Apple's nowhere near as the challenges that Facebook's facing at the moment, for example. Now, a judge unseals trove of internal Facebook documents following our legal action. In nearly all cases, the parents knew their child was playing Angry Birds, but didn't think the child would be allowed to buy anything without their password or authorization first. According to an internal Facebook memo, the memo noted that on other platforms such as Apple's iPhone, people were required to reauthorize additional purchases, such as re-entering a password. A Facebook employee noted that children were likely to be confused by the in-game purchases because it doesn't necessarily look like real money to a minor. Yet the company continued to deny refunds to children, profiting from their confusion. In one of the unsealed documents, 2 Facebook employees deny a refund request from a child whom they refer to as a whale, a term coined by the casino industry to describe profligate spenders. The child had entered a credit card number to play a game, and in about 2 weeks racked up thousands of dollars in charges, according to an excerpt of messages between 2 employees at the social media giant. So, shows you how slack I am. I didn't know you could play Angry Birds. I love Angry Birds. I didn't know you could play it on Facebook. So, I don't know what part they're selling and how Facebook's getting their revenue. Don't know. I play it on my phone, and that's the only place I played it. I haven't played it for a while. But, yeah, we're talking like Facebook's just going from bad to worse with regards to everything these days. So, I hope they get their act together, because we use Facebook ourselves here for doing our live shows. Otherwise, we can just, do we start looking around now for somewhere else to do our live show? Do we do it on our own so that people can just come to us and know that they're not going anywhere else? I don't know, but that makes it very hard. I have to find a social network that everyone wants to join that isn't bad. And I don't know whether that's possible yet. Now, also don't forget, this week we are brought to you by Aussie Tech Heads Podcasting's own AussieTechRadio.com. This is where, as I've said previously, 24/7, just rolling along, one show after the other, after the other, after the other. You can just have it playing in the background while you're working, and I promise you'll pick up 1 or 2 things every week, and you go, oh, I didn't know I could do that, and you go, oh, where did, or you're doing something, and you go, where did I learn that? And then you realise, oh, I heard it on a podcast a week ago. Like, it's really cool. Just listening to all the different shows. There's Aussie Tech Heads podcast itself. There's Aussie Max Zone, of course. Old Fart Geeks. What about Geeks Interrupted or Two Blokes Talking Tech? Apple Slice. Let's Talk Leadership. Tech Your Life. Vertical Hold. Yeah. So get in there. Just have a listen. Just leave it playing in the background. Very, very simple. Yeah, now what about need a new digital strategy? Just nimble it. Now, an online lender prepares to reposition in mainstream banking. As we know, this Just Nimble It ad with the thing. So there's no shortage of ambitious, money-chasing anything that might steal margin from banks or potentially be acquired by them. But Australia's first generation of fintechs, financial technology companies, are gearing up to expand out of their niches ahead of slightly delayed open banking shake-up. Now, specialist unsecured lender has revealed it expects to grow significantly on the back of a repositioning strategy into mainstream/digital banking sector, and is now on the hunt for a new chief digital officer. According to the non-bank lender, the role needs to own and implement Nimble's go-to-market strategy, as well as the company's overall systems architecture that its visionary CEO wants put in place, along with building a top-notch tech team. So if you're into that sort of stuff, if you think you fill that role, have a look on Nimble's website for their job and go from there. The shake-up comes as the consumer lending sector faces a battering in front of the parliamentary committee every week as the predatory practices, payday and shadow lenders come under scrutiny. However, the fintech niche has suffered persistent reputable damage over its aggressive sales tactics and targeting of people close to financial distress, who later find themselves locked into loans with interest rates social welfare advocates characterise as abusive. So yeah, please be careful of what you're signing into. But yeah, Nimble's obviously trying to go mainstream. And as I said, if you think you fill that role for the jobs, or you want to be part of that top-notch tech team, have a look at Nimble's site. We're not being paid for this. I'm just going, that's a bit of Australian news that I found, and I thought, plug it along. I mean, on the how smart Apple people are. Apple people are creators. So I'm very, very biased, as you all know. Now, basically our last little bit of information this week. Popular VLC video player is getting AirPlay support. Isn't that awesome? Now, the popular open source player VLC is getting AirPlay support in about a month. Videoland, the team behind it, also plans to make it easier for users to switch to VLC from iTunes. Now, the confirmation comes just as VLC celebrated a staggering 3 billion downloads, around a quarter of which came from mobile devices. So good on you, VLC. Proud of you. It's a good app. It's the one I recommend for people because when people are clicking on websites and it says you need a new codec to watch this, I tell them if you can't watch it in VLC, it's crap. It's a way of conning you into downloading malicious software onto your computer. So if you can't watch something in VLC, it can't be watched. It's just a con. So yes, please have a think about getting VLC, especially as it's getting easy access to iTunes and AirPlay support. Now, don't forget, there are show notes in the download each week. Now, the link being aussiemaczone.com.au, where you will see the last 5 weeks' show notes that you just click on. It's just going in a little circle saying episode number so-and-so, episode number so-and-so, episode number so. Click on the one you want, you get all the show notes. Don't forget, you can just search for Aussie Mac Zone on Spotify. Now, thanks to... has that been up the whole time instead of me? I'm hopeless. It's because I'm doing it all on my own this week. Shocking. Thanks to our sponsors this week being Aussie Tech Heads Podcast and Aussie Tech Radio. And more importantly, to our supporters, you, our listeners. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And all the best.